And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
I was very skeptical when I first heard of Railways of the World, the card game. Railways of the World was a derivative game of Age of Steam, but it's this gigantic, big game. And I found that for the most part, something, the card game, usually is not as good as the original game. Or sometimes it is, but it's not as meaty as the game. Well, that's certainly true here. Railways of the World is not as meaty as, the card game is not as meaty as a regular game. However, it's still a very fun game. I'm still very impressed with it. It almost feels like it should have been Ticket to Ride, the card game. There is a Ticket to Ride, the card game, but it's not nearly as good as this one. This one offers enough meaningful choices, enough card hand management, that I think it's a worthy addition to most shelves. But let's look at it. So here you have your scoring track for the game, which looks like a horse racing track for trains. You move them around whenever you get points. If you pass 25, then you add another marker here. It's a pretty nice track, scoring track. It's just kind of overwrought for a card game, but hey, I'm glad. That's just how Eagle does things. Then over here you got your draw piles and your cards. There's 3 cards face up that you can draw from. But the main thing that we're going to be dealing with is right here in the middle. This is the starting depot for the game. Now, players are going to have cards in their hands. This is Railways of the World, the card game. And these cards will have a different color track, also with a symbol, a value. Here you have an engine, which is basically a wild. And then you'll have cities, which will have a numerical value and then different colors coming into that city. The city itself also has a color of goods. Now, on my turn, there are one of 5 different actions that I can do. The first of these is to build a link to a new city. Now, if I want to build a link to this city, I need at least a value of 2 tracks attaching to it, and they can be brown, orange, purple, or white. So let's say I do 3 white. I can do more than 2 if I want, and I connect it like that. Now, building a link like that shows that I've scored 3 points, because that's the value of the link that I have. I put one of my train colors there to show that I now have a link from this depot to that city. And now that that city's on the board, it's a value 2 city. So we'll randomly, from this bag here, draw 2 goods out of the bag and place them on the city. So that's one thing you can do, and obviously bigger cities can make the game bigger, and you can build off links that you already have on the board. This does not matter as you're playing the actual geography of the board, because things might get all confused. You know, you can't say, well, this doesn't fit here. You just move the cards so that the tracks will fit. And you'll find that you're not building as many tracks as you might think anyway. So that's one of the things you do, and that's one of the ways to score points. Another way to score points is to play an engine card in front of you. Each player has a pile of engine cards in front of them that shows how many links they can deliver cubes on. And let's talk about those cubes. Say for example, I have a 5 city, which should have come out with 5 cubes. And here are the 5 cubes on that city. I can deliver one of these cubes to another city as long as I have the engine. So if I'm the green player, I take the red cube here and boom, deliver it over my link. That gives me 1 point. It's delivered to the red city, so it's gone. The red city is a city that wants the goods. Let's say there was more links farther in this direction, and I had 4 engines in front of me. I can move it here, bam, bam, and then continue on those other links. As long as the first link I move it on is mine, that's fine. And every train that I move it across gets a point for the player whose color that is. So that's another action you take, is deliver goods. You can, when you play an engine card, you can combine that with a deliver goods action if you want. You can also discard a card to take one of the cards, either the top card from the discard pile or one of the face-up cards. And then, of course, you can pass and do nothing, which means you're in a really bad way as it is. After you're done with that, you can draw 2 cards from over here. You can draw them from the face-up cards, in which case replace from the draw pile, or you can draw them from the draw pile. If you take a wild, just like Ticket to Ride, it's the only card that you get. You're not allowed to have 13 cards in your hand at the end of your turn, and you pass it on. When the game ends, you score points. We look at each city on the board. So let's go back here. Each city will score points for the player who has the highest value attached to that city. So green is actually going to win both these cities because he has a value of 5 attached to them. So he gets 5 points for this city and 2 points for this city. During the game, you're scoring goods and you're scoring as you connect to new cities. At the end of the game, you get 1 point for each engine that you have in front of you. And then there's some funky rule, which actually feels a bit contrived to me, on getting points for different sets of goods that you've gotten. You get 2 points if you have 3 that are the same. You get 3 points if you have 1 of each color. And then you get 3 points if you have 4 of one color. And you get 5 points if you have 1 of each color. So at the end of the game, which is when the deck runs out over here, and when that deck runs out, the game's over. Everyone scores up their final points, and that's the end of the game. I really like this game. It's a lot of fun. Like I said in the beginning, it almost felt like Ticket to Ride the card game as you draw cards trying to get what you need. Everybody starts with a wild engine. Everyone starts with a 2 city, so you all start on basically the same equal footing. But you have to be careful. You use too many of those wild engines as actual tracks, and you'll find that you need them to move links later on, to move the goods around. There's a lot of maneuvering, and there's a lot of the feel that I get from Age of Steam, but there's a lot less tension, mostly because the game goes so quickly, and because you're kind of at the vagaries of what cards you draw. But be that as it may, I feel like the game has enough strategic depth to be good. It captures the feeling, but at the same time is a different game in of itself. I wouldn't say buy this and then you don't need to get Railways of the World. They're very different games, but this is a compact, mobile one that is not just some light, fluffy game, but actually offers some meaningful choices.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.